Welcome. I can't wait to dig into this session here with Amelia. This is going to be a masterclass in outbound for events. Amelia has spent the last 7 years at SaaStr. She is a marketing master and really thrives at the intersection of events and content and beyond. I think I'm underselling your broad scope of
That's
skills.
okay.
Um, but I think to kick us off before we get into the meat of the conversation, I would love to just know and understand, like, what is your ethos and your point of view on the connection between great outbound for events? So the connection between initial speaker outbound all the way to post-event content syndication.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we can keep this conversational, and then I know, you sent me some really good questions that I just put together a few thoughts into some slides for, so if folks want it after the fact or whatever, and when we share this, you guys can have it. It's sort of our formula that it has been long revived and I'm constantly iterating literally every day for all of this, right? For content, for speakers, for marketing and sales at SaaStr. It's all kind of a flywheel, if you will. But yeah, it's all interconnected. Which I think, really where I've taken this a lot more seriously too. And then, SaaStr.com was built from Jason Lemkin, who's our CEO and founder, all his, OG learnings. There really wasn't anything like SaaStr out at the time. There's more blogs, right? Everyone's an influencer now. So there's obviously a lot more content out there. But I still think it's really important what SaaStr does just in the marketplace for SaaS founders as a community, right? We always say we're a non-vendor product, meaning we don't have our own product, right? That we're pitching at our events. We certainly have sponsors and certainly a lot of attendees that are representing different companies, right? Like thousands upon thousands of companies. But we're not, outside of if you want to come sponsor or attend, cool. But other than that, we try and be non-vendor, non-bias of there's things we like and things we don't like and use and change. But yeah, we don't have our own tool, right? So when you think of things like a Dreamforce, right, in SaaS or B2B, if you will, that's obviously a Salesforce conference, right? So we're a bit different in that we're all community based. I always say nobody has to come to SaaStr, whether, you're attendee, speaker, sponsor, whatever it is, nobody has to go to them. It's like, it's pretty cool that people do choose to go to it every year. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just, it's actually just keeping that all in mind. And then I think, specifically for this topic today, I think where I've gotten a lot more learnings on it and more maybe zen on it is treating it just like every other piece of outbound we do, like whether it's, you know, outbound for, well, you'll see it in the deck in a second, but, I really say adopting a almost sales mentality. You kind of have to these days, right? In terms of getting speakers, and it's just getting really good at outbound. Like, I think if you're good at
Hmm.
outbound or if you can find somebody good at outbound, they can do it for speakers, right? It's not a magical formula, and it's what's worked for us, but, any good outbound is good outbound. So it doesn't matter who the audience is to some degree. It's getting really good at figuring out, okay, how can I reach the right person at the right time with a pretty good message, right, to convince them to do something.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? I mean, you're having a more personalized approach. You're also like you're building a community, and this
For
is
sure, yeah.
another
It beats
strategic
itself. Yep,
lever in which
yep.
you're growing and feeding your community, and also providing an experience that sets the standard for who you are, what you do, what you provide. So I think that's powerful. And Amelia put together some slides. I think, feel free to share them as like a companion piece as we move through the
Yeah,
conversation.
I think let's go through your questions because I think they're good, and I just wrote, these are really just notes for me to remember stuff with this, but also what's
Totally.
helpful for folks to know, I'm always having done a lot of events now, I'm always a proponent of having at least 5 slides. So I think I ended up with a few more, but yeah, I like to just to help
No,
if you drop in late, that's also, something we do at SaaStr is we always whether even if it's a fireside, we even just put the questions on, like, a slide, like, what if
just
somebody
throw them.
walks into the room yeah, if you walk into the room late, at least you have an idea of what they're talking about versus, like, it's gonna take a few minutes for them to get to the next question, and then I'll catch up, like, even if you just have the question on the slides, you're instantly like, "Oh, okay. I know what they're talking about."
This is great. This is great. So I think just to ground everyone, we're really going to move through like three key motions, three key areas. We're going to talk about speaker outbound. Once your speakers are locked in, we're going to talk about speaker engagement, and then we're going to like kind of connect a thread that weaves through the whole process on then what do you do with your speaker content post event, post session. So I think Amelia, like, let's just kind of start at the top. I'd love for you just to pull the layers back on your strategy and approach for effective speaker outbound.
Yeah, I'll say, I just mentioned it briefly. I'll chat about it a little bit more. I think the thing that kind of flipped a switch for me, and this was actually recently, was just adopting more of a sales mentality too. And I don't mean, I don't not all the bad things that come with sales outbound, which, we just posted on SaaStr.com. This AMA Jason did at the end of SaaStr Annual. He talks about, what works in outbound and what doesn't, because there's this hot debate of, is outbound dead or not? Like bad outbound has always been dead, but good outbound still works. So that's really what I mean by adopting this mentality of, again, good outbound is good outbound. So if you're like, I'm not sure that, maybe you have a comms team or a PR team right now, and you're like, I don't know that they're going to be able to do this level of outbound that I need to get my speakers. Maybe go find an SDR that like doesn't mind
Mhm.
doing this either on the side or whatever. I mean, I don't know if you can really do it on the side, but that can give you enough time to do this because they'll be more used to doing this, hyper personalized target outbound, or just figure out how to do it yourself, right? Like a lot of this, even though we do get a lot of inbound submissions, and to your point, we have a community of folks that, reach out to us and our speakers alias and all that stuff. We still go outbound, like for all of our events. Like we have
Mhm.
so many stages and speakers you need to, right? The other stuff certainly helps. But even at our scale, you still need to, just given the amount of content and stages that we have that we and the amount of sessions we want in a particular, topic that we want, we do end up needing to go outbound. So, I think one, if you're like, "Oh, really don't I don't know if I need to go out," but like you do, right? It's 2025. I think everybody needs to to get to fill out your agenda, right? Again, to some degree, the other stuff will help. Like again, we get a lot of submissions, too many. We get a lot of folks that pitch us, either formally or just, having our POCs or just, lately I've gotten more to my inbox just personally, which again is all
Mhm.
fine on the flip side of it. But I think it doesn't excuse you from still doing this mentality and just focus of, okay, if we really want the best speakers, we have to try and get them ourselves, right? I think one, there's nothing wrong with that. If we're even doing it at our scale, there are other people, we know some of the organizers of events bigger than us, and they do too. Like everybody kind of has to do outbound. Again, you just have so many speakers and so much stuff you want to fill. You're going to inevitably have to ask. You're going to have to make a few phone calls, maybe send a few emails, right, to really get those folks. And so I'll talk. So I think that's number one, right? On the that's what I mean by the sales mentality is be very programmatic about it too, right? So a lot of this is
Yep.
I literally copy pasted what I started implementing with our outbound sales team, but just for a different audience, right? Obviously different goals, but a lot of the principles are the same or applicable between sales and then um with content, right? So I think, mentality is one, fine, that's kind of a flyer. I think
Do
tactic yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm curious, like, do you even have metrics associated with your speaker round? Like,
Yeah,
you
we
know
do.
that
Yeah.
like this many X outbound touch points will result in this many secured speakers. Like, what is I'm just curious what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah, so we do have a so I'll tell you that, and it's kind of a nuanced answer, which I know people may maybe hate, but it's a nuanced answer because it depends on who you're outbounding to, right? At SaaStr
Mhm.
scale, you got to think like we have a pretty good database of people's emails just from 10 years of it, right? I mean, we have Apollo and Zoom info too, but like we have a pretty good database of the CEO and probably whoever is on their team that is working with them for things like this, right? At bigger companies, they have somebody pretty almost dedicated to doing stuff like this, right? Of either, get me on talks or coordinate talks, whatever. Like it's either a PR person or a comms person or a marketing person, office of the CEO person sometimes, which I think I talk about later, but there's always this person on their team, right? So we have that, but yeah, we have goals, right? And I think it's kind of to my second point of creating a target account list, and yes, that is goal setting as well, right? Of okay, we
Mhm.
we do it with the intentionality of right, like how many we do it by category, like how many CEOs and founders do we want? How many people do we want chatting about AI? How many people do we want talking about demand gen and marketing and sales? We do it from a stage like company stage perspective. Like, okay, we've had a number of public companies now. We've had people that are, more so 100 million growing, whatever it is, 10 million. Like
Mhm.
we have all these goals. We also track things, what we call like new voices, like who's new to SaaStr, who hasn't spoken yet.
Well,
Um, we have like a, headliner list of folks that we always kind of want. And then, again, you get submissions, and up and comers. And then we're very big, and you can see it on SaaStr.com. We're very big on our inclusivity goals as well. So that's something we always factor in of, okay, as a whole, how do we balance out, having enough gender diversity, ethnicity, background diversity so that, our community is really feels inclusive because we do get people from around the globe who come. And so we want folks to feel like, they're learning and seeing from different voices that maybe don't get to go on the circuits as much at other things like a SaaStr.
yeah, that's great. I think that's great insight and really helpful. And I before we get too far ahead, I wanna double click on something that you just mentioned. And you've mentioned twice your submission process. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, how does your call for papers or call for sessions like blend with your outbound strategy? Like, what's the balance? What's the sweet spot?
Yeah, good question. So we do it very uniquely in that we do it year round, 365 for our submissions. So right now you can literally go on SaaStr.com and submit a session. It will
Okay.
still say things like, the speaker brief, which I linked in here, is on there, right? Because it kind of gives you like the tips and tricks of what we're looking for. Um, it actually just becomes a balancing act closer in life to show that it is now. Like right now, since we do take submissions 365, right? Like we've had some folks again, this does kind of feed itself eventually. You have folks where, they submitted early in the year. We had our event this last September, but maybe that timing didn't work out. And so we kind of already have a straw man of, okay, but now, the next one's in May. Does that work for this person? So I think it's just one of those things where like you can do that almost later, right? Because you have the benefit of they have some sort of want to do this already, right? Inherently, if
Mhm.
they're inbounding to you, they're saying, "Yes, I want to submit to speak." They've already maybe thought about, even for 30 seconds, the fact that they want to get on a plane, like put in the work, right? Is like just like they want to put in the work to come be a speaker at your show. If you're outbounding them, you have no idea if they are a
Mm.
super fan, as we call them, if they know SaaStr at all. I mean, I can make some guesses, right? Because we have a lot of data. But other than that, you are basically asking them for a favor. To some degree, we do the outbound. You kind of have to front load the outbound because the inbound, we do it year round and it will keep happening. And to some degree, we'll tell folks too if like we're marginally interested in them on the inbound, like, hey, maybe like we always do like a save the date now. And we say, this may or may not come to fruition later, and it may not come to fruition for them either. Like a lot speakers drop all the time, you know,
Mhm.
massively. So like you always need
Yeah.
kind of extra. But yeah, that's where, we kind of do that later on in the process because, these are the outbound folks are the folks you really want to get, right? So I talk about here creating a list, but these are the folks this is your wish list, right? This is if I did a whatever Coachella equivalent lineup, who would be on this lineup poster for me, right? That should be who's on your list to go after.
That's great. For folks tuning in, I linked both the 365 application and the speaker requirements from SaaStr in the chat
Awesome.
if you guys were curious and wanted to check it out. Um, and I love that. I love that you're using your CFP to just be like a future state content feeder.
Yep.
That's just enriching all of the value that you're trying to bring to your audience. It's fantastic. Um, any other like notes or strategic tactics on speaker outbound, I think, before we transition into the next topic area?
Yeah, I'll share you guys the example next. I think just a few last things on this. We've covered a lot of this already. I think don't gloss over it, right? Like, and then I think one mistake we used to make too as Astra, right? And then one I kind of adopted what was working for sales teams outbound to just the lens of speaker, which again is different, but there's a lot of principles that carry over and work. Is I found that we were making it too much about SaaStr in our like previous outbound. It was all about, and you'll see on the next slide, some of it is about SaaStr, but it's how SaaStr can potentially help the speaker versus it being too much about us. I think again, I think that's true of any outbound. And obviously, to some degree, you do need to make it a little bit about yourself because you are pitching them at the end of the day on whatever it is, speaking, in this scenario. But I think if you make it too much about you, it's too much of a favor upfront. Like whether you know this person marginally or not, I don't think anyone wants to straight up get asked for a favor if they don't think there's going to be some sort of value to them, right? Again,
Mhm.
very similar principles to sales here. Like, what is the value add to them? Like, what is the benefit to them as a speaker, not to you as a company or you as an event? I think that's where I've read a lot of other emails I've seen because people will ask, our CEO to speak or they'll ask a member of our team. And so I get a lot of these like flip side submissions I see from teams trying to outbound us to get, our team to go speak. And I'm like, yeah, this is too much about you guys. And what's in it for me, right? Like if you should really read the email and say, what's in it for them? Like if you can answer that question, you can probably hit send on the email. If you can't answer that, then redo the email, right? Like resend it. Again, I think too, we talk about this on just general outbound on SaaStr.com, but do your research, right? Like I wrote it here. Some people think this is aggressive. I say spend an hour on every great speaker you want. If you're like, these are the 12 whatever, 12, 20, 25 people, 50, I want to get, it's a couple days, but and maybe it's a week of your time, but it's like block off a week, spend an hour on each person that and I truly mean an hour. And we do this here. Like I will, unless I really know the speaker and I can kind of do it off the top of my head, I will spend, half an hour researching the company, seeing what are they promoting? What are they talking about? How does that tie into what you're doing, right? Like again, make it about them, not about you. And yeah, doing your research really helps, right? It will also sometimes it helps. I put it here like having a straw man in mind of why you're reaching out to this person, right? Again, it'll show them you've done your homework. I think a lot of the times that's a tipping point for people. Like you've got to think these people, whether they're a CEO, VP, whatever that you want to get as a speaker, they're not just going to get your email, right? They're going to get pitched all the time by salespeople, and they're
Mhm.
going to get pitched by other events that maybe want them at their events. I can't tell you how many times now that we're in May, I've had a few people that are like SaaS security companies be like, "Ah, yeah, this is great, but it's like right after RSA and they're already doing RSA." Like it's the nature of timing. Um, and it's also it's a great example of you're not the only one asking this. You're probably not the only one asking this person uh, more often than not, right, to come do this for you. So again, I think doing that research is crucial to crafting the right message, making it more about them. And then I think too, as part of that research process, something I always do is make sure I go direct. So depending on whoever your speaker is, I email the speaker. There's like this was highly debated internally. Like we should just go to the comms team. We should just go to the office of the CEO. I'm like, I'm going to CC those people for sure. You should 100% CC those people
Mm.
because sometimes the CEOs don't read every email or they'll inevitably they'll internally respond to those people who are CC'd and say, hey, can you follow up this person? That happens a lot to us, right? They'll be like, oh, you already put the contacts on here. It saves them a step from having to be like, let me loop you in with my EA. Let me loop you in with our PR person. It's already on there. I sometimes I'll get a response from the CEO directly, or I'll get one from the team saying, hey, so and so CEO flagged this to us. Let's set up a time to talk about it, right? So again, it shows that you've done your homework. It saves them time. So you want to make this as easy and painless as possible because again, you're asking them for a favor. And you asked me this earlier, like how many times should you ask people, like, is there a formula that works? Depends on the relationship, right? It also like,
Mhm.
I think most companies now can see if they opened your email or not. Like if they've opened our email, I'll usually wait a few weeks if we have something that's relevant, right? Again, relevant to them, to reshare with them before I ask again. After that, it really becomes a conversation of, okay, how badly do we want this person? Do we maybe have a point of contact there? Or somebody who knows them that can get us in front of them if we really want them. If not, we probably just let it die, right? That's why your list has to be
Mm.
pretty long because you can't take it too personally if people don't open your email or don't respond to you because you are, again, asking them for a favor.
Yeah. And I also think the more outbound you do, the more you're going to have a realistic grasp on like what your rate of return is. Um,
Yeah, 100%, right? Like most times again, doing this right, 9 times out of 10, we'll get an open. Like
yeah,
9 times out of 10, unless for some reason we got the email wrong. Or keep in mind it some of the bigger companies who try and outbound, they might have blockers, right? Because if it's an external org, they might have different filters, et cetera, where your email just literally did not go through. But 9 times out of 10, if it's a really good email and subject line, they'll at least open it. And then you can
yeah,
decide from there, okay, like they opened it. How many times did they open it? Did they open it immediately, later? Can you see if like, their team is opening it? Because again, you're gonna if you see the right people, you're gonna see if they're opening it. Then if you're like, "Okay, it's been a week, but they're literally opening it like 20 times," you could probably safely say, "Hey guys, is this of interest? Happy to share more info. Here are other confirmed speakers," right? Sometimes that's important to people. So yeah, you will it's programmatic per speaker. I don't think there's any one formula for one person. And sometimes you have to go other routes, right? It's not just email, we've used social media to outbound to people. We've used probably investor, funds of, "Hey, you invested in this."
connections. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So email does work a lot for a lot of things, but it's not a silver bullet. So yeah, I'll just show you guys kind of an example. Again, this is an example for SaaStr, and this is a version of a template. So I will say, like, this is a version of a template. You can already probably see which portions are templated. But this is again, a lot of the points of, making it more so how can it help them. And I'll just point out a few things that kind of have worked for me personally when I do this kind of outbound. Um, well, one, I'm doing it myself, so I do think that helps, right? If the speaker sees someone with I don't know, title, sometimes the titles matter, right? And you can make one up. You could be head of speaker outbound. It's
Yeah.
fine. Head of stages at whatever event you're in. It's fine. Like, it works. It doesn't really matter. Um, you know, so yeah, so this is a version that I pulled out of, all right, one, I gave them some context, right? Our team recently attended, in this person's case, they recently attended some of our broader team went to an event. They saw this person speak and was like, oh, that person might be good for SaaStr. I did some homework and I was like, yeah, they're probably great. So, we went and we saw you. It's a little bit of flattery at the beginning. Wanted to see, to make sense for their schedule to come to SaaStr Annual. I link our specific event page here, right? I also put the date in that first two sentence, whatever. This is the first two sentences. Um, Scheduling, I think, is half the battle. Like
Hmm.
sometimes they'll stop reading after that. I'm already busy, and I'll get an instant, "Thanks so much, already booked for May." And that's fine, right? At least you got a response. Um, Again, a response to decline is totally fine, and you'll get those, but I think it's important to put so many times too, and this is even just in marketing emails. Last week, events people will send emails that just don't have the date, and then we have the location, right, SFA area, um, somewhere, and again, this is a screenshot, and I didn't really resize it because I was like, it needs to fit on one screen. Like, your email needs to
Hmm.
just fit on one screen, like, don't make them scroll. That's a mistake. That's too long. They're not gonna read it. And put the dates at the forefront, right? Um, Anyways, so then the next part is, what again, making it about them. What is the context? Maybe what have you done already with them, right? That they may not know about. In this case, we had a different member of their team on our podcast, which I linked. This person might not know that. I don't assume the CEO knows that, their CMO was on the podcast. Even though this podcast was recent, I don't assume that. Like, I know that, right? 'Cause we promoted it at SaaStr. They may not know that. They may not remember that. Like, I always try to give them context. If you've at all done something already with this company and you are trying to get somebody higher up at this company, I would always reference that you've already done something with them. I would not assume that they know. Um, and then again, we try and add value here. That's the middle section that is a little bit more templated, right? But this this has gone through a few iterations. Um, I took a lot of thought actually of what to put here of, okay, what do we put? Okay, we're in the Bay Area. We've done this, what are the dates? Just make it clear on the location. Put your expected audience size. You can put a band here, right? There's a reason we put a band. You won't know till you no, I mean you can predict, but nobody will really know till you get there. So we always set a range. We put a tidbit on like who's in the audience because I will tell you that's also the number one question we get is who's in the audience, right? For us, we have I actually think it's 61% now, but 57% of the audience is VP level and above. Um, we do pre-promotions, post-event write-ups, which I've linked, and then data. I always find that again, these are two
Mhm.
data points, right, in a short amount of time. It's how many attendees they can expect at the show if they come, what's the level of the audience if they come, and then what is this really gonna get me? Well, that gets you like a lot of exposure, right? Like the benefit of doing something like this, which is probably true for a lot of events, is the exposure that you're gonna give this company that they may otherwise pay for, right? A lot of companies are doing paid media, whether it's ads, PR, whatever, they're paying for it, right? So this is a good
Mhm.
way most and a lot listen, 99.9% of CEOs understand this. They understand that, like, if this is done the right way, they can get a lot of like, seemingly earned press for, whatever the cost of a flight if you don't cover the flight. Like, that's pretty good. Like, you're not gonna get a million impressions for whatever, $1,000 plane ticket, like, $1,000, right? Like, there's no way. Like, Google
Yeah.
Ads are expensive. Um, so, yeah, and then, we, explain, again, clear benefit to them of why they should do this. We went through, again, we have 11 years of speakers. You might not. We put some of our, very top speakers on the slide and then just embed the slide. This is a sample set, but here are some of the folks who've spoken. It's a pretty good set. I think
Mhm.
choose a mistake I've seen people make on the flip side when they try and ask, our team to speak is they'll say their most recent speakers, but like maybe not their best all-time speakers. And I have no qualms about that. I'm like, these are some of our best all-time speakers. Like, does it matter that some of these were maybe 2 or 3 years ago versus this last September? No, this person does not care about that. Like, they just wanna know who's been like, who else has made it worth their time, right, to
Yeah.
see if it's worth their time. Like, it's just a good, like, whinge check of, "Okay, it was worth their
Mhm.
time. It's probably worth my time." To look at something like this, and then I link our speaker brief at the end. Um, I used to attach it, and then I found that the open rate was lower because the attachment was too big, so then I just started linking it.
Yep. And they click right
So
through.
yeah,
That's
and they click
this
through. Yeah.
this is great. Yeah, and I guess just to quickly summarize, right? I think the other thing that I would call out is like plain text is always gonna
Yeah.
win an outbound. And I just love like date, you know, bullet points, getting data across quickly. This is great. And Chris gave you a shout out. Love the hustle and personalized approach. Getting great speakers, SMEs, thought leaders is a sales process.
It
So this
really
is
is.
this is great.
It really is. I think that, that's thing number 1. Like, if you're gonna like, "All right, I'm gonna start with this I'm gonna start the process tomorrow."
Yep.
Go sit with go sit on a few calls with your outbound sales team if you have one, right? See how they're doing outbound. That's hopefully working, right? Or
Yeah.
there's tons of YouTubes on people that are doing outbound. There's endless webinars like this, right? Of people are doing outbound that where it kind of actually works. Like, it's gonna be different. You're gonna stumble in the beginning, so maybe don't do, your VIP speakers first if you're uncomfortable. We're comfortable at it, so I'm like, I can go, I can cherry pick the number 1 person on the list and do that right now. You may need to start at the bottom of your list, right? Of like, okay, if I force rank the 1 through 100 people I want, maybe start with person 100 so that if you flub it
Mhm.
or if you have a lot of learnings, then you also just like sales build confidence and okay, now I feel good about going to person number 1.
Yeah, that's great. I think something else that you mentioned, and I think this segues really nicely into speaker engagement and content planning is,
Yeah.
I honestly just think about my own past experience. The last event I was producing, we would, it was a smaller scale event, but we still had 125 speakers. And I'd say
Yeah. So like,
90% of them were selected outbound. And as
yeah.
soon as a speaker said yes, the content creation process, at least in my world, was very bespoke, very white glove. So we're not just spending an hour researching, we're spending, depending on the speaker's
Yep.
bandwidth and what they have, we're spending
Yep.
30, 60, 90 minutes just aligning them to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with our audience, making sure that benefit flows back to them and co-creating content. And so I just think about that, like that importance of the time that's dedicated to the content creation process. So I'd love to know, like, once, once a speaker is selected, you're engaging a speaker. Could you just walk through the content journey from speaker selection to stage?
Yeah, it's a good point. A lot of what you talked about is very valid, right? You got to put in the right cycle. Like, it's like not to equate everything to sales, but it's like getting a verbal commit and then not getting the signature, right? Like you do have to follow through.
Hmm.
Like to me, I'm like, I don't actually count a speaker as confirmed until I see them on the stage. Like at any point, even if you're like, and yeah, I have a spreadsheet right now that says this person's confirmed. That
Yeah.
person's confirmed. I'm like, yeah, but until they get on stage, it is a soft confirm. Like, if they're on stage, great, they made it. But at any point before that, they could drop. We've had, everybody knows this on the call, like, they could drop the morning of. So until I see, them mic'd up, I'm like, okay, that person actually made it. Cool. Until they're mic'd, I treat it as an ongoing process, yeah, of continued outbound and continued engagement. You have to, right? You wanna lower the chances that they don't get on the stage. Obviously, you
Hmm.
wanna maximize them getting mic'd up and going on, but that process still continues. So yeah, I do think to your point, it has to start, like, immediately for sure, I agree with you there. Um, and you have to dedicate the right time and resources to it, and again, making sure you have all those doing that research beforehand. You'll already have, most of the right POCs. They add usually more people to the process as you get closer, as you go forward,
Hmm.
right? That's natural. You gotta engage all those people. Um, scheduling is really, for us, half the battle. But yeah, I think other than that, you have to start immediately, right? You've gotta work with their teams, be mindful of their timelines. Sometimes I'll just ask them too, like, "Hey, look, here's the quick spiel. We usually do a full cycle of communications and kickoffs, but if you do or don't wanna do that, you can let us know." Like, do whatever works for them. Like, I said it on here, do as many prep calls as they want, not as many as you want. You may wanna do
Hmm.
5. They may wanna do 0. That's fine.
Yeah.
If they wanna do 0, but they wanna come, 90 minutes early to just check out the setup and then do their presentation, let them. To some degree, let them. Like, ask for their slides, but again, it's a favor to you. So, and, like, we're fairly like, we have guidelines, of course. We have docs and portals and all this stuff, but some people throw it out the window and it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
it is okay. Like, you're not gonna have the same relationship and process, much like the outbound side, on the engagement side that you go for everyone. And then obviously be very mindful of, okay, if they're a public company or, if they're a bigger company, they might have a lot more rules than, a startup, of like a hot startup that just wants, is doing a lot of this and is, wants their name in every conversation. That's great, right? That's great to capitalize on that. But some people need to review things and you do need to respect that, right? And be super clear and transparent of like what's next steps, what do they expect? Just, and if you're not sure of the rules, just ask them like, hey, you know,
Hmm.
great, we have XYZ person coming to the show. Can we have, their headshot and bio? And then 2, just let us know if there's any rules of engagement we need to know about, right? Like, otherwise, we'll assume we can promote this like everybody else. Most people don't care. Some people will tell you, yeah, we need to approve how you use this in graphics, or I can't have this person in, group shots or whatever if you're doing like whatever it is. Again, I do to the degree they want, but agree with you. It's got to be all white glove and fairly bespoke at that point, because nobody has the same contacts on their team. And it's again continuing to add value to them, right? Like, this is something we do. I don't know how often people do this, but like letting them invite key contacts either at the company or like customers. We do like
Hmm.
a lounge on site, which I know a lot of people do, but sometimes I've been to other ones that are not as great or not as nice, or they're too far removed from like the show. I'm like, oh, the event's
Hmm.
like over there and we're in like a separate building for the green room. And I don't know, I'm not really going to hang out at that event that long, right? Because I feel kind of removed what's all going on. So yeah, it's super white glove per person. And then yeah, I mean it's basic, but if they tend, I call it tentatively confirm, but if they confirm for you in an email, send them a calendar invite. It's just it's simple, but and make sure it's loaded, right? Like we put, okay, this is the exact location where you're going. This is like we have a dedicated speaker check-in. We have golf carts so that, again, we've had public company speakers. We golf cart them from point A, from entrance to green room, and from green room to stage, basically from point A to point B the whole time. It's not anything related to this, but we also have like speaker security now. I think it's
Hmm.
2025. You got to keep your speakers. We keep everyone safe, but especially our speakers, right? Um, we have, security is around if they need it. We've had folks bring their own additional security that we've worked with, right? Again, just depends on your level of speaker, um, and who they roll with, basically, who's in their posse.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you gotta just, factor in all those things and just make it clear on the invite of either them or, their EA or their team. Okay, this is where they're going. Here's the address. We're super clear. We have security. We have a dedicated check-in. We'll give you your badge we have face sheets we print for just speaker check-in. I don't do this for every attendee. That's too hard, but face sheets of, okay, this is, I mean, you should know the speakers by now, but sometimes, we have temp staff that we need to okay, here's a face
Just
sheet.
quickly identify. Yeah.
Yeah. Figure out, we pre-print all the speakers, just if you kind of see their face. You can also ask, hey, I think you're, XYZ person from company. Hey, yeah. Okay, great. Here's your badge. Go on, super VIP.
That's great. That's all. Those are all great insights. We only have a couple minutes left, and we're just scratching the surface. But I think
I know.
before time wraps up, and I value everybody's time here. I value your time. I do want to make sure that we quickly touch on post event content syndication, and I think
Yeah, it's
SaaS,
good.
right? Like SaaStr is the leading example in market of best in class content syndication. And so would love for you just to give insight into how do you then transform all that great energy put into speaker outbound and session creation and speaker experience on site to long lasting content that helps fuel your content flywheel.
Yeah, I think it's the funny winky thing that I did at the beginning, but it's true. Like you can't indicate your content unless you have. I should have said good recordings. Like you can't send it. Like when I first got to disaster force for 7 years ago, some of the recordings were terrible. Like I will not name the AV vendors. I won't name the venues. I don't actually even remember who these people are. No offense. I had just joined. Right, I was new. I was new. I was not as involved, so I don't remember who they are. Um, but I remember not everything was recorded. So I've tried to go back, like more recently to be like, didn't we have this person speak at my first SaaStr, which was like 2018? And then I'm like, where's the record? And then, you have to go back. You got to find these vendors. You got to see if they have the recording. And then it turned out it just wasn't recorded. And these are like now
Mm,
CEOs of public companies that weren't public at the time, but were doing pretty good. Um, and at the time, it wasn't recorded. So yeah, one, record it, and test the quality beforehand. And I think be super clear on your expectations with whoever your AV vendor is, right? It doesn't matter who it is. Like be super clear on this is what I want the final output deliverables to be. Like I want these angles. Maybe I want multiple angles. This is how I want, and sometimes you'll be surprised. Some AV teams by default will deliver you one audio file. I'm like, no, I want each speaker on its own audio file. Cause for me, we chop it up, we put it on podcasts. Sometimes one speaker is a louder talker than another. I'm a loud talker, like
mm,
it happens. Um, I want separate files. You have to be super clear on what you expect from them. This might mean you're going to talk to your content or marketing team to say, okay, what would you need to syndicate this after the fact? Like ask somebody who's using Premiere or something what they need. Um,
mm,
and be clear, right, of the different formats you need. Obviously we live stream, so a lot of what we repackage is already kind of packaged together, which is quite nice because it saves us time. However, I still have like 5 different angles, right? I have each speaker kind of on a cam. I've got the live stream edit, which, they're going picture in picture, they're going between slides and then speakers. But, you got to ask for all that beforehand because you can't go back and say, oh, hey, did you happen to record this other angle? No, they didn't unless you asked them to, right? So that's, I think, something to be super clear on beforehand. I've been known to have a backup plan or make sure you go through your backup plan with the AV team. Like we literally blew a fuse box this year, but we had a backup one and a backup generator, and they just unplugged one and replugged the other one. And there's literally a 30-second gap on the recording, but nobody knows, right? Like 30 seconds is not, I lost the rest of the session. It's, I lost a minute. That's not that bad because we blew a fuse. Like that could be much worse. I could have lost the whole thing. I only lost a minute, right? That's not that bad. Um, I'm a big proponent of this. I test every stage myself for real. We
Mhm.
have endless AV people who are great, and we have endless speaker team people who are great, but I go and test them all. And I mean, test it for real. I will literally have them record, and they know now because they we've used the same AV vendor, and they know now to say, okay, the day before, and they're just going to go to every stage. She's going to put some slides, whatever. I use whoever's the opening slides, and I just, I talk peas and carrots, whatever. I talk about whatever Taylor Swift, like talk about whatever. You don't have to speak to their slides, but like go through slides for real. Have a few minutes of conversations. I'll usually grab someone from the team. So there's at least multiple speakers, right? Test multiple cameras, and microphones. And I have them record it and I have them push it to our live stream, but not necessarily push it live. Or sometimes you guys might have seen a glimpse of, there's 60 seconds of Amelia testing. Nobody cares. Like they can see you're testing a stage for the next day. Most people will be like, oh, hey, SaaStr. And then they'll like click away. It's fine. Like we'll test the live stream, we test the recording, and then I play them back. I'm like, okay, record it. We
Mm.
wait at the stage. I go to a laptop. They pull it up in, whatever, 2 minutes that it takes to process. And then I listen to it. I'm like, does it sound good or not? And I've changed a lot of audio levels based on that and not based on the room.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great. That's great advice. Just testing real time in the environment. I love that.
you
Love it.
gotta. You gotta make sure,
Um,
the clicker works. Where's the clicker gonna be? Gotta know these
yeah.
things.
I think the emphasis on like the quality of recording. I think so much we're like we're making adjustments based upon the room, not on the quality of the recording. So it's just a
Yeah,
quick
which
note.
I think a lot of people overlook, right? Like, yeah, obviously you want the room to sound good, but for me, I'm like, I actually want the live stream and the recording to sound a little bit better than the room. And that's been a conversation, right? I will often sacrifice a little bit of the audio quality in the room so that the recording and the live stream sounds better. Because for us, yeah, there's 10,000 people at SaaStr, but there's like 50,000 people watching on the live stream. That's more. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
if you put those
uh,
people in a room, that's more.
yeah. I do have one quick last question. Once you capture all of this recorded content, what's your internal process for identifying and selecting which content you want to reproduce in other
Yeah.
formats across various channels?
Yeah, it's a good question. I usually have a straw man. I put it here. I do a straw man now, pre-event of the order of content release post-event. And I do this based on, again, we force everyone to do at least 2 or 3 slides, even if there were questions. And I rank them. I rank them 1 through 3. 1 being the best, 3 being not, you know, below, whatever. It's 1 through 3. It's not 1 through, whatever. 1, 2, or 3. Is it ranked 1? I don't know. It's what I picked. It's 1, 2, 3. I will literally rank all the slides beforehand. If I have an abstract, I'll pull that up too. So I'll, pull up the abstract, I'll pull up the slides, and I'll rank them and I'll say, I think this one's going to be a 1. This one might be a 2. This one I'm in the middle. I'll literally put it's 2.5, 1.5. And I use that and I'll say, okay, um, the things that will skip that ranking are things that are time sensitive. So if people are talking
Hmm.
about, investing in 2024, that kind of has to go first because for when you're in September, right? Kind of have to put that up now because then it's 2025. So anything that's super, super hyper time sensitive, those always go first. And then, yeah, and then I do it just based on the ranking of tier. And also, like, again, building and knowing, okay, do your speakers have requirements of, okay, they do want to read this beforehand, right? Like, okay,
Hmm.
if they want to read it beforehand, I'll push it out a few weeks, even though maybe I want that to be the first session I release, but their team will need time to review this beforehand. Just bake that in so that, you're not, okay, then I'm not posting for a week because they haven't gotten back to me yet. Like, you kind of have to have a few of these in the hopper too that you think are pretty good. And sometimes, ones you think are a 1 end up being a 3, or things that are a 3 end up being a 1. And you shift it around. Like, I try and power scrub through as many sessions well, I watch a lot of them in real time, right? Because I'm just endlessly going around Zenster, making sure everything is great. And I'll kind of like hear tidbits. I'm like, oh, that one's good, actually. I'll move that one up in the rankings. Or the team will be like, oh, I sat in this session and that one was really good. we'll kind of collate the feedback. And then, yeah, and that's the order we do it in.
Amazing. Super insightful. Before we wrap, Amelia, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your wisdom, your time with us today. Where can folks learn more about SaaStr Annual?
Yeah, I would say, oh, it is the next one. Yeah, SaaStrAnnual.com. I think just, the other thing to keep this has been a lot of iterations to get here. And we still constantly iterate on this. Um, two, just if this is my only, well, one, you should all come to SaaStr, but two, if this is my only plug, we are hiring for on the event side. So if you know of anyone great or you are someone great, just email me. I'm Amelia at SaaStrAnnual.com. And yeah, that's kind of my only plug.
Awesome. Well, sounds great. If you, Amelia, if you want to send me that JD, I'll include it in the follow up to
Yeah, that'd
everybody
be awesome.
that registered and attended. We'd love to help our peers in the event industry find their next best job at SaaStr. Thank you all for attending. And as everyone wraps up the year, I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday. Hope that the holiday break gives you time to rest, celebrate, and provide whatever you need to start 2025 fresh. So thanks for joining us this year, and we'll see you at the start of the new year. And Amelia, thanks again. This was great.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Glad I could help out a little bit.